Thank you so much for joining us on the Politics Wrap. Now, in the spirit of Women's Month, we wrap up our interviews that feature women in politics. Over the past few weeks on the Politics Wrap, we have featured various women from different political parties. And this week, we are joined by the Deputy Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Mapaseka Steve Letseke. You're also well known for your days in activism. Not only did you establish NGOs like the Access to Chapter 2, you were also, and you served in the South African National AIDS Council.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us at SABC News.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and good evening to the
Thank you. Deputy Minister, one would ask, why didn't you just continue with your role in activism? How did you find yourself in the ANC? You're now also an ANC NEC member.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the ANC, so my activism was brewed by the ANC in my teen years. You know, when you really take different pathway, you know, you've always been in politics, and personally is political. And I think one must never take, you know, the teachings in the ANC that it leads you to government. Actually, ANC members are everywhere. You find them in the civil society movement, in the private sector. You find them in national and international platforms in different sectors, by the way. And that's the kind of teaching and that's the kind of school ANC allows us to do. So now that I have taken the active role and I'm now in the National Executive Committee, but also have been deployed to Parliament and subsequently, of course, the appointment by the President, is ANC deploying me to government. So many of us in the ANC have been schooled to grow up in the organization.
And you talk about Parliament, you look at the representation of women in Parliament over the years. It has increased significantly. I mean, in 1994, you were sitting at 28% of women in Parliament. 2019 is 45%. But is it not a cause of concern that most people who actually vote are women? Most people who actually are registered to vote are women. But you look at the composition in Parliament, what more needs to be done?
Well, dealing with systematic oppression of gender or dealing with sexism, it's a very big task. 68 years ago, women marched challenging past laws, and women marched challenging inequalities. So you can just imagine the incredible women like Abu Mam Charlotte Maxeke, Abu Winnie Mandela, Abu Lillian Ngoyi, who has always challenged the issues of gender inequality. So even with us who are organizing these days as gender activists, as feminists, we constantly have to deal with dismantling patriarchy and dismantling some of the inequalities that exist. So the oppression and the pushback is because patriarchy is still alive. And yes, women hold the power. And I think we have an opportunity. But women holding the power doesn't mean that, you know, there's nothing in front of the lane of that power. The patriarchy, misogyny still exists, and that's what we constantly have to deal with and push out to ensure that what we have enabled, what we have enacted in our country with our beautiful constitution and policies, it's really removing the barriers that stops women's empowerment and full liberation to participate equally.
And you talk about barriers. What other challenges do you face, you know, as women in actually this space, apart from patriarchy? Do you find that as women, arratan as well, we don't support each other? There's this concept that I've been repeating over the past few weeks on this show of PhD, puller down syndrome, whereas I am not your keeper as Natasha, and you're not my keeper as Mapaseka.
Look, there are a lot of dynamics. One cannot deny that. But I think there's a particular narrative about how we want to define and characterize women in politics, but also generally women, that we've defined and we've said that there's a puller down syndrome. Of course, maybe that exists, but maybe we need to look at a positive way that are we actually creating space and creating an enable space that allows us to be each other's keepers, to fix your crown. And I think we do have that opportunity. And the negative narrative that plays out actually becomes a reality. So we're almost calling for this negative and bad projection of women. Now, I'm not interested in that. And even if people want to say that, oh, no, I'm not going to stand and support a black lesbian woman, or I'm not going to support a woman with disability, or I'm not going to support a black or white, So those contexts, including young women. So maybe that's what we need to rephrase our narrative as women. I do think women have always championed each other and fixed each other's crowns. And we are just not telling this narrative enough to show the power and the will of what women can actually do together.
Okay, Deputy Minister, we're also joined by two other ladies here. Lerato Ngobeni, who's from Action SA, the spokesperson of Action SA. She's also in the portfolio committees of Home Affairs, Small Business Development, and Basic Education. And she's also got a rich background in corporate and civil society organizations. And of course, we're also joined by a lady who made the headlines yesterday, Colleen Makubele, who was the SARA president, but is now joined the MK party. She's a former COPE councillor and former speaker of the city of Johannesburg. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Lerato, I'll start off with you. I mean, you've got a rich history, a rich background in corporates, and other sectors as well. Why did you choose politics, and why Action SA for you?
Thank you so much, and good morning to, is it good morning? Oh my goodness. This shows women in politics, we don't sleep, it's morning all day long. Good evening, and thank you so much for having us on the show. I have to say, I recently just got comforted by watching the series Mujaji, Queen Mujaji. And the tagline of that show says, "Destiny will find you." So destiny found me. Politics found me. I didn't choose politics. Politics chose me. I have been running away from it. But I guess, also our rearing is important. I was raised by a mother who was a teacher at Morris Isaacson High School. She was an activist in her own right. She fought for equality in the education space way back then. Unfortunately, she passed away just after voting in 1994. And so, this life chose me. And I think that to the Deputy Minister's point, there's a lot of work. We make up the larger segment of the population. And so we must take up spaces in politics, in spaces where laws are made. There was another quote somebody sent me and said, "Those without fallopian tubes should not make laws for those of us who have them." And so it is important for us to participate, and I'm glad to be seeing lots and lots more women who are taking up space in politics. You see them in corporate. It is slow, I have to say, but we are quite encouraged by the number of women, the caliber of women who have entered the space and who are taking up, their place in the legislatures across the country, in parliament, and in different places, in law, etc. So I think this is a great century for women.
Colleen, like Lerato was saying, politics chose her. Was it the same with you?
Good evening, Natasha, and good evening to the Deputy Minister and the Honorable Ms. Lerato Ngobeni, who's also a sister and a friend to me, and the other women that are here. I would agree with that, because I think it's not something that I chose from the beginning. I have a rich academic background, as a computer scientist. I studied computer science. I did business. I've been in corporate and private sector. And I never dreamt of myself becoming a politician. And here I am. And for me, it was really the passion and the love to help people, to impact people's lives. And I was doing that through my business and working with women and science and technology, which is my passion. And through that, when I was appointed to chair the board of Post Office and to chair the board of one of the entities in the city of Joburg, that's how I entered the the politics, and I fell in love with it, brutal as it is, and really it's a crazy space that you just have to think differently than what you think like when you're in private and corporate, and not friendly at all most of the time. But I find myself really enjoying making a contribution to the affairs of whether it's a city or the country or in the community. It's fulfilling to me, and it just happened to be part of who I am. I think I had to discover that in the journey that I traveled. So yes, I can agree with what Lerato said. It has to do with the exposures that we've had, perhaps a bit of upbringing, but it's not something that I can say I watched somebody in my family do it, or I was raised into it, I was part of the struggle. No, it's something that I happened to come in contact with through serving people and through interacting with communities and loving it.
Okay. I also just want to get your reaction to the recent crime statistics. We heard the police minister, Senzo Mkhunu, earlier on saying that these stats are a sobering story about the severity of the problems the country faces. You've got rape that is on the rise, murder, hijacking, and extortion are also a cause of concern. I think, Deputy Minister, for you and your department, seeing that it's a very important and crucial one, what can you do to actually help these cause of concerns?
Look, we need all stakeholders to play their role. Our mandate really is to advocate and to mainstream, but also to coordinate. We've enacted a lot of policies. I mean, President Ramaphosa continuously integrated and signed into law gender-based violence and femicide laws. And these laws are important. Now, laws must never be created just to sit. They must be implemented. And South African women deserves protection. We cannot afford any woman to be murdered in our country, raped in our country, any young woman to also be, violated. Statutory rape is a big issue. Now, that's exactly what we're going to do in this 7th administration, to make sure that South African Police Service plays its role, social development plays its role, and all other parties that must actually enable the empowerment element. But big part of it also speaks to the
Deputy
empowerment.
Minister, unfortunately, we just quickly need to go to a break. We'll pick up on that conversation when we come back. So we're still in conversation with the ladies in studio. And Deputy Minister, I just want you to pick up from where you left off. You had said that it's all hands on deck to ensure that we tackle these issues of the crime stats in our country.
No, indeed. I think it's implementation. But the big part, we really need to invest more resources around prevention. We need to prevent gender-based violence and femicide in our country. We also need to deal with the social fabric. It's one thing to talk about policy, which legislatures, policymakers, parliament, and even government really puts in place. The social fabric, the social behavior of our people, the substance use and abuse, the whole violence that happens in our homes, in our churches, in our schools, must come to a stop. But part of that, one thing that must be accepted is men that must stop this behavior. Until men own up to their action, it's really where we're going to be dealing with it. But also, the silence of our friends and neighbors. We cannot accept when a young girl, 10-year-old who's been raped, to deliver a baby in our country, that our families, our neighbors, keeps quiet about it. And those are the things we must deal with. Now, what did we do and what did we propose as a department? The programs that speaks about social behavior change, parental skills, but also going into communities to do awareness, working with civil society organizations that does incredible work, but also working with all other stakeholders to fight gender-based violence. Those are key in everything we do.
Thank you so much. Lerato, I just want to take this conversation to you. I mean, you heard what the Deputy Minister had to say, that we need to deploy more resources to prevention. But also, I just also want you to weigh in, because of lack of time, on what's actually happening in the 3 metros in Gauteng. We know that there were talks between the ANC and Action SA to stabilize Gauteng's 3 metros. Lerato, I saw a statement where you said Action SA wishes to clarify that the party is undergoing a period of review as it relates to its position in the governing coalition in the city of Tshwane. And I saw a clip of a councillor withdrawing its motion of no confidence. What's happening in the city of Tshwane?
You just had to sneak that in. Women in politics. I had to sneak that in. Look, so yes, we released a statement. There was a motion of no confidence in Tshwane, and that has since been withdrawn or postponed, whatever the case may be. We've come out and we've said, look, people voted, when people vote for you, they vote for you because they want you to govern or demonstrate what it is that you can do and your capacity to do the things that you have promised in your manifesto. And I think the electoral results of 2024, I think, has forced all of us to reconsider what reshaping the future of politics and the future of South African governance is going to look like. And coalitions are part of the future of our politics. And that's been said over and over and over again. And so, there's a saying that goes, a wise person changes their mind when you get new information. And so here we are. Tshwane is going to be revealed in the near future. Yes, we are having an internal review of our position in Tshwane in particular, but we've definitely made a statement around what it is we want to do in Gauteng. We do have the numbers in the 3 metros of Gauteng, Ekurhuleni, and the city of Johannesburg, and we must use the mandate that the people who voted for us have given us. And so we can't sit on the sidelines, and we've decided not to sit on the sidelines. In what capacity, that will be communicated in due course.
Okay, Colleen, I just need to ask you this. Yesterday, we didn't get the opportunity to speak yesterday, but you've moved to the MK party. But people have been saying that the writing was on the wall. There was that press briefing, remember, that the former President Jacob Zuma had, and you were standing next to him. And some people said, listen, this comes as no surprise. So what does the future hold for Colleen Makhubele in the MK party?
Look, Natasha, the future is pregnant. I don't think we can predict it at this stage, but there are so many possibilities that we can expect. But the first is to expect that Colleen will be an active member of MK, serving within the party at whatever capacity. At this stage, I'm just an ordinary member who has joined the party. And you must remember, and this has to, I hope it comes across very clear, when SARA was formed, it was an alliance coming together, consolidation of majority parties at the time that were in government locally, provincially, and some, in the National Assembly. And of course, the vision that we had at the time, we did not achieve it because some parties pulled out. I was fired out of COPE. And so SARA took a different shape, with me becoming, a member and others, members into SARA, not coming through an alliance partner. And MK presented a similar vision to consolidate all these progressive forces. And listening to Lerato, I think Action SA is becoming a progressive force slowly, and I like what I'm hearing.
We've always been progressive. We've always been progressive.
We will welcome them to the left very soon. But look, the idea is to consolidate all the progressive forces, the different parties, especially African parties that believe in the same vision. There's no point in this day and age with the dynamics of our political landscape to have 70 parties, different leaders, all these presidents wanting to contest, saying the same thing to the electorate, confusing everybody, just wearing different T-shirts. Everybody's ego wants to be called president. I think that time is over. This is a time where we need to come together. attack and deal with the issues that are facing us as a nation, be it crime, economy, and all of this. We have different ideas. Let's bring them in the same pot. Let's join hands, unite all of these voices, and come up with the strategies. How do we fix our country? And we can't do that fragmented like that. We have to come together as one voice. You see, GNU is trying to do that in its own weird way. We are also in the progressive forces trying to do that. And that's why you see me joining MK. Okay. It's a natural progression from what Sarah stood for as an alliance to what MK wants to do in calling everybody to say, listen, we're a new company, we've got this great opportunity, we've got this electoral base, we've got these votes, but we need assistance, we need technical skills, we need women, we need young people, we need all these partners to join hands with us and we build together. And that's the call that they're making to anyone who's willing to volunteer themselves. So hopefully you'll see my voice being heard, you'll see my contribution being more pronounced and profound through this platform of MK, and we will Gwazam Konto all the way.
Okay, I was calling, unfortunately, guys, but thank you so much for joining us on the Politics Wrap, and this is as we wrap up our edition of the Politics Wrap this Friday. Thank you so much to our studio guests.